So this is my 1990 Lexus LS400 rear strut adventure. The rear struts were completely blown on this car. It going over like bumps and stuff on the highway. It felt like I was riding a Jello mold. So ordered a couple of struts off of eBay, $85 for both, shipped. Great deal there. And went about pulling the old strut spring assembly out. I guess I should start where I started, which is inside the car. First thing I did was had to remove the seat cushions, or the seat bottoms here. And you can see down at the bottom these little slots. That's where there's some black tabs on the bottom of the seat cushions, and you just kind of I grabbed the tabs with a pair of pliers and pulled up, and the whole seat bottom just came right out. Once the seat bottom was out, I was able to access the 4 bolts. There's one right there. There's a couple on either side of the transmission mount here, and I actually had to remove the seat belt buckle mechanism here because it obscures. Actually, I think it goes like this, and it kind of obscures the bolt on either side. So you remove both of those seat belt buckle things and pull out those bolts, and then there's one more bolt over in the corner. So there's a total of 4, I believe they're 12mm bolts. Pop those, grab the back of the seat cushion, and pull up, and the top of the seat cushion is mounted on these hooks. There's 4 body-colored hooks across the back there, and the seat back pops right out. Once the seat back is out, there's these covers that go over the tops of the strut mount assemblies. I think these were 12mm bolts that are holding these down. Pop that off, and then you finally get down to the meat and potatoes here, which is the actual top of the strut, or strut mount, or insulator. But anyways, there's 3, what are they? They're 14mm bolts. And so all I did was, I tried getting a good crescent wrench on them, but it just didn't seem to be enough torque. So and a deep well socket. Sorry, I got junk in my sockets here. But anyways, a deep well socket was actually too high. You're technically supposed to remove this rear deck, but I just didn't feel like doing that. So I was able to slip the socket over the nut and just kind of place my wrench down in. It didn't really lock into the socket, but that was okay. And I was able to pull all 3 of the nuts off that way. Once those were off, then I went outside here. I ended up disconnecting the sway bar mounts back here, and I'll show you why I did that in a second. And then down at the bottom here, there's a through bolt, and this one was actually a huge pain in the ass. It was like seized in place. Actually, I should say the nut was seized in place on the other side there. And I don't have acetylene torches or anything like that, so I ended up throwing MAP gas on it, and WD, and MAP gas, and WD, and finally, with the help of about, I don't know, 2 feet of persuasion here, got the breaker bar on it, and she finally let go, and I was able to pull that out. It's actually kind of tricky getting this strut assembly out. I guess the official way to do it is to like remove the rear axles and all kinds of crap like that. But the quick and dirty way is to actually, once you get that through bolt out, you kind of knock this out of the lower mount here, and you articulate the suspension upwards. So you got to lift this control arm assembly upwards, and it will give you enough clearance to turn the shock about 90 degrees, drop it down, and then once the spring assembly drops down, you're able to tilt it back towards you and just pull the whole assembly out. It's pretty straightforward. I made the mistake at first by thinking I had to push this suspension assembly down to get it out, but that actually puts more tension in here, and it doesn't give you the clearance you need to manipulate the strut. Once the strut is out, you've never done struts. I've only done them one other time, but you put your spring compressor on them. These hooks latch onto either side, and then I just took my air gun and compressed the springs. Once the springs are compressed, this is the old strut, and that's the dust boot. Once the spring is compressed, there's a nut on the top of the strut here, and there's I think it's called a spring insulator. So that you remove that nut, and you can take the insulator off and switch it all over to your new hardware, which is what I did. Just to backtrack for a second, one of the best tips I got on the forum here about changing these struts was to make sure I marked the position of the two front bolts here. So you can see on these bolts, I took a whiteout pen and put whiteout on them, so I knew how to orientate the bolts in when I fed them back up into the mount here. Yeah, another thing that I learned on the second one went so much faster than the first one, was to also not only mark the bolts, but also mark the insulator, because the position of these bolts in relationship to the position that you have I'll have to show you on the old strut. So the position of the top bolts that are normally up here in relationship to the position of this the through bolt for the bottom of the strut has to be the same as the way it originally was, because obviously if the top is twisted just a few degrees, and the bottom's not going to line up with the top when you go to reinstall it, and that was a mistake I made in the first one, probably a good hour and 45-minute mistake. It took me to figure that out and get it corrected, so I didn't make that mistake with the second strut. So I hope this helps anyone who's contemplating this job, or you just don't want to pay someone else. I learned a lot doing it, and I hope I was able to share some of that knowledge with you. Good luck. Thanks for watching.